Okay, so real quick, a couple things I wanted to go over. Just talking about overall charging. One of the things to mention is that when you're talking about level 2 charging, you're typically talking about 240 volts. So with that said, level 2 charging is more efficient than level 1 charging, which is your typical 110, 120 outlet. And with that said, the numbers that I got just from overall charging at my house with the Tesla charger through a regular outlet, I got roughly 80 to 85%, so in between those numbers. And then when charging with a level 2 charger, I averaged 96%. So if you look at my 14 different charge sessions, looking at that, I actually used 199.8 kilowatt hours. So, but with that for the level 2 charging, I only put into the car 192.4. So that was an average of 96%. So out of those 14 days, essentially, we lost just through the power, like, the cord and what have you, just the inefficiency of electricity being transferred from one place to the other. We lost about 7.4 kilowatt hours. So in general, that's a pretty large amount when you talk about in a house, but when you talk about efficiency standpoint, 96% is pretty high. I'm not able to see what this is for superchargers, but essentially this is what it is for level 2 charging, at least from a charge point station. At my home, I averaged 84% efficiency, and I put in to the car 43.1 kilowatt hours, and what actually was used throughout that was 51.6 kilowatt hours. So a loss of 8.5 kilowatt hours for that smaller amount. So as you can see from just looking at that, you could save electricity just from using higher gauge wire and using a more efficient charge. So with that said, basically comparing driving my old Focus ST to my Tesla Model 3 Performance, and just comparing the numbers from the standpoint of how much does it cost to drive 1 mile. So if you think about that in general, you can add that up to however many miles, the lifetime of the car, and different things like that. So the Focus ST, it requires, and this is rough estimates, obviously it depends on how much it costs for your gas, but essentially the numbers that I'm taking here are $2.93 per gallon for premium gas, and this is a little while ago, so this isn't current. There's a few things to take into consideration here. One is how much premium gas is. The lowest I can find in my area for this particular time was $2.93. Taking that into consideration for the Focus ST, which I averaged, or took the average out of the 40,000 miles that I drove the car, average of 23.35 or 23.325 miles per gallon, which is not that great, but driving it hard and driving it on the track, all those things taking into consideration. Now, with that said, the cost to drive a mile is 13 cents for the Focus ST. Now, if you flip that over to the Tesla Model 3, and I took two items here. One was how many cents it costs per kilowatt hour in my particular area. So that's how much it cost for the actual ComEd to charge me, but also the transfer fee and the taxes. So with all of that, I averaged over the last year 17 cents per kilowatt hour. And then also taking into consideration the Tesla superchargers that I passed through. So essentially we're looking at roughly 25 cents per kilowatt hour, which is quite high, but I live in Illinois, so your mileage may vary. But with that taking into consideration, to drive a mile charging at my house is 5 cents per mile versus the supercharger, which is essentially 8 cents per mile. So you're looking at 5 cents versus 8 cents per mile for the charging at home and supercharger, and you're looking at 13 cents, which is a bit higher, to drive my Focus ST, which again doesn't have great mileage, and it does take premium gas, different things like that. So if you have, for example, a Prius that doesn't take premium gas, then your mileage will change from that as well. Okay, so if we took a car like the Prius, for example, which averages roughly 55.5 miles to the gallon, 58 on the city and 53 on the highway, then we take that and we look at what the cost would be. So we're going to take that same $2.93 for regular gas, and then we get roughly the same cost to drive a mile. So 5 cents to drive the Prius around, which equals the Tesla Model 3 Performance, which also costs 5 cents to drive a mile. If you take the overall cost of me charging over the last month, it would have cost roughly $34 to charge my car the entire time I was driving. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.